Good morning. Today I would like to go over the sewing machine parts and the ones that will be helpful for us next week when we start to use the sewing machine. So I've taken some pictures of the sewing machines that you will find in the back room, and I would like to go over some of the major sewing machine parts. So the picture on the left, you are looking at the right-hand side of our sewing machines. You will see down here in this bottom right corner of the right-hand side of the machine, you will see the power switch or the on-off switch, and right next to that is the power plug. So if you look at this picture on the right-hand side, you can see the plug that will go into the side of the machine, as well as the plug that goes into the outlet in the wall. So this is how we supply power to our machine. We take the outlet plug, put it into an outlet. We make sure that this is plugged into the side of our machine, and we need to make sure that we turn the power on. If the light bulb is not on your machine, you have not turned it on. So we need to make sure that the switch is in the on position before we can start to sew. You will also see that the outlet plug and the power plug for the machine is connected to our foot pedal. Our foot pedal controls the speed of our needle. So the faster or the further you push down on the foot pedal, the faster the needle is going to go up and down. It's very similar to an accelerator in a car. The harder you push on the accelerator, the faster the car goes. So the same is true with our sewing machine. The further down you push on the foot pedal, the faster your needle is going to go up and down. The next thing that I want to mention is this knob here, which is hard to tell looking at the side view, but when I show you this view, that's not a great picture either, but this knob over here, you can spin it, and it is how we manually move the needle up and down. We call it the hand wheel. So the hand wheel manually moves the needle up and down. Okay, so here's the front view of our sewing machine, and then we also have, I took a close-up view of the needle area because that is where a lot of the work that we're going to do is going to happen. So looking at the front of the machine, up here in the upper right hand side on the top, you see these two pins that are standing straight up. We call those the spool pins. This is where you would place your spool of thread. Some machines have them in the horizontal position. Here we have vertical spool pins, so you place your spool of thread up here. You see this shorter pin sticking up. This actually moves left to right. You will be able to slide that left to right. It needs to be in the left-hand position if we are going to be sewing fabric down here. This is the shorter pin is called the bobbin winder. It winds our bobbin. So what is a bobbin? Let's start with that. The bobbin is this little plastic circular piece that we need to wind thread on. You see this red thread coming out of the machine over here. As you watched yesterday in the How Stuff Works video about how sewing machines work, we know that we need two different threads. So we have a bottom thread and a top thread to make that loop stitch. So that bottom thread is wrapped onto a bobbin and then placed into the bottom of this machine, and then it comes out over here. So how do we get this thread on this bobbin? We're not going to wind it by hand. So our machines come with a bobbin winder. You put that little plastic bobbin on the short pin, you slide it into the right hand position, you loop it around this little metal piece over here, and you push on the foot pedal. And again, as long as this pin is in the right hand position, your needle is not going to go up and down. It's just going to spin this piece, and the thread is going to wind onto your bobbin. When you push it back in the left hand position, then your needle is going to move up and down for regular sewing. So again, this little guy over here is the bobbin winder, and we use these two pieces as well as this tension disc up here to wind that bobbin. The next thing that we're going to look at, you see this little metal piece on the top of your machine. We call that a thread guide. So basically, how does our thread get from this spool pin down to our needle? The first step is to go through this thread guide. We'll look at threading the machine a little later this week, but we have to go from the spool pin over to this thread guide, and it basically just guides the thread down through these crevices on the front of the machine to our needle. I'm going to do a close-up of these dials right here, and we're going to talk about what they do. This first dial right here, oh, and you have a better view of our thread guide as well. But this first dial right here is called our tension disc or a tension dial. The tension dial does exactly what you would think it would do. It adjusts the tension that we have on our thread. So if we pull our thread really, really tight, it's going to make a smaller stitch, and that's good for thinner fabrics. We don't want a lot of tension on the thread if we're going to sew a thicker fabric. So we would turn these numbers to a higher number so our tension isn't as high. Since we're just using a cotton fabric to make our pillowcases, it's not something that we're really going to have to worry about. This dial right here, this knob on the front of the machine, is the stitch selection dial. The machines have these things that pop up here that tells us the different stitches that the machine can make. So basically these numbers on this dial correlate with these numbers up here. So we just want a straight stitch. We'll probably keep it on number 1. You can see that number 4 is a longer stitch, number 6 is a zigzag. So this is just a different stitch selection dial. So if we go back to the close-up for here, this right here sticking down is our needle. This right here is called the needle clamp. That is, so if we break a needle, which possibly could happen, we would need to turn this needle clamp to loosen the needle from here. So the needle clamp basically holds the needle in place. Right here, we have a presser foot. Your presser foot is going to hold your fabric against these feed dogs. Okay, so the feed dogs are going to move as the needle goes up and down. The feed dogs also move, and they're going to push the fabric to the back of the machine. If we don't have our presser foot down, then we don't have any pressure against those feed dogs, and the fabric isn't going to move through. So the presser foot holds the fabric against the feed dogs. This metal piece here is called the face plate. You'll see that it has a lot of numbers and measurements on it. You can't read them, but they're fractions. We usually line our seam up with this one. It's the 5/8 inch seam allowance line. So you basically line the edge of your fabric against one of these lines. So it'll help you sew in a straight line, and it will act as a guide. And then if we go back to our picture of our bobbin, here. So our bobbin goes into this little guy, which we call the bobbin holder. And our bobbin and bobbin holder get inserted into the bottom of this. So this flap obviously opens and closes. And our bottom thread on our bobbin goes into the bobbin case down here. So again, these are the major parts of the sewing machine. There are lots of other parts in here, but the ones that we are going to need to know. One that I forgot right here. This is actually a button that you can push in, and it is called the reverse stitch lever or the reverse stitch button. So when we sew fabric, you're going to put it in up here and it's going to go out the back of the machine. There's going to be times when we need to like back up. So anytime that you're pushing this blue button down, your fabric is going to go in reverse. So we call this the reverse stitch button. And then, I did forget one other one. You can't see it very well. But right back here in this little nook, it's called the presser foot lever. Our presser foot lever will actually move our presser foot up and down. So I mentioned that it had to be in the down position to press the fabric against the feed dogs. So there is a lever that moves it up and down, and it's right in this crevice. And I think that is all of them.